There is so much science in this chapter. Like, not gonna lie to you, I had to read it twice. Hello and welcome back to the couch. We saved you a seat. My name is Luke and today we're checking out chapter 13 of Project Hail Mary. Picked up this book because the comments after reviewing the trailer said I should. And I'll tell you, it's been awesome. So I decided to do a chapter by chapter review. If you want to follow along, go ahead and click the description down below and there's an Amazon link. And purchase it, jump in, and let's get started. So I'm going to jump into chapter 13. Here we go. So last time we talked, Ryland and Rocky had an intimate moment where Rocky's all alone. But this chapter begins with a flashback to a New Zealand maximum security prison. And Strat and Ryland are looking to enter to speak to a maximum security inmate. But Strat and the guard have this pissing contest, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of funny. It's a little bit too much, to be frank with you. Like, she's becoming kind of a caricature. She was a caricature in the lawyer scene and in the courtroom scene. This is a little bit caricature-y, but it's fun. It's part of the story, so I'm into it. But essentially, she finally gives way to what the guard wanted her to do, so she could talk to this doctor, Dr. Robert Riddell or Riddle. I'm gonna call him Riddell. I don't know what the appropriate thing is, but I'm gonna call him Riddell. Anyway, Dr. Riddell's in prison because he unintentionally allowed for 7 people on a crew on a project he was working on to die. But Riddell doesn't think that. So there's some back and forth between Riddell and Strat about, hey, why are you in prison? And he's like, well, I embezzled millions of dollars. I didn't kill those people. And then Strat's like, okay. So Riddell explains the whole thing and how it went. And then they get to the very end and Strat cuts to the end and she's basically like, so had you been there on site, would those people have died? Instead of gambling all your money away, being on a month or week or whatever bender in Monaco? And he was like, yeah. He didn't really respond, but his silence kind of says the answer. And so Strat sound like, now that we've cut through the bullshit, I need to talk to you about an email you sent us. So he had sent an anonymous email from prison talking about how they can create an astrophage farm utilizing the vast amount of space that's within the Sahara. Essentially, it's 1 meter by 1 meter black plates with glass that's 1 centimeter separation, and it would create enough space for the plates to heat up to the necessary temperature, 96.415 degrees Celsius, and create the perfect environment to create a ton of astrophage. Now, to be clear, it's not the most efficient. Even Ryland argues this is not the most efficient way to do this. But there are something like 9 trillion kilometers or square meters of area in the Sahara that it's not being used. So it's the perfect environment for this kind of cultivation of astrophages. Then Ryland brings up the ecological issue, climate change, and how it would disrupt everything else. And Dr. Riddell says, look, dude, death is not better than a couple of areas having a little bit different temperature. You know, what are we doing here? And so Strat asks Ryland, are we capable of doing this? Is this a good idea? Because Strat can pull all the resources to make it happen. She confirms that. So Ryland says, yep, I can. I think it's a good idea. So they've got a new member of their Avenger squad. But when you get back, so after that, we get back to the present, and Ryland wakes up in the tunnel, and it's pitch black dark. He turns the light on. Rocky says good morning. Ryland goes and gets some breakfast, and he gets washed up. He talks about having not taken a shower in a couple of days, which is kind of fun. And he goes back to Rocky, and he finally gets up the courage to say, okay, Rocky, are you here, essentially, for the same reason that I'm here? And Rocky confirms that. And so then Ryland says, yep, I'm here too, for the same reason. Good deal. But then Rocky says, how did the rest of your crew die? And so Ryland very cautiously says, because we had to go into a deep sleep to even get here safely. And unfortunately, due to luck, really, the other two didn't make it. And so Ryland says, where's the rest of your crew? And Rocky's like, well, they didn't make it. And that Rocky had determined that it was because of some sort of cell death. But he didn't know why there was cell death in the rest of the crew. And so Ryland realizes that it's radiation poisoning that killed the rest of Rocky's crew. And Rocky had no idea that radiation was even a thing. And Ryland's like, how did they even make it to space and not know what radiation is? And then we cut to a flashback. And the flashback is Ryland and Dr. Loken are meeting to discuss some sort of science thing. And there's a little bit of, their relationship's way worse. Okay, it's way worse than it was even before when they were arguing about random stuff. So they've been avoiding each other. But Strat was like, look, Dr. Loken, if you have any updates, go to Ryland. So Ryland's like the Spock of this situation because he's like the head science officer. So she goes to him and essentially spills the beans on her relationship with CERN, the Large Hadron Collider that's in Europe. And they have discovered how astrophage stores energy. Actually, they discovered two things. And the first thing is how astrophage stores energy. So apparently, and I had to read this, I'm telling you, 2-3 times to kind of get to figure out how this kind of works, look up a few things. But essentially, astrophage, when it's alive, can store neutrinos inside its cell membrane. And the way it creates neutrinos is when two protons collide at high enough velocity, their kinetic energy is converted into neutrinos with opposite momentum vectors called pair production. The neutrinos are extremely small, like 20 billionth the mass of a proton. And because of that relationship between because of the relationship between temperature and velocity, they deduce that the ideal temperature for the correct velocity to cause the exact reaction is 96.415 degrees Celsius. In result, astrophage can't get too hot and it can't get too cold. If it gets too cold, it'll just use the energy within its body to heat itself back up, whatever stored energy, like a human. And if it gets too hot, it collides the protons really, really hard, but it can't do it for very long. Okay, and then we know all this about the neutrinos, that the neutrinos have all the energy, because in the earlier chapter, the Russians measured neutrino bursts happening when the astrophage died. Then, when neutrinos collide, they create photons. And these photons are the exact same, which is the exhaust, I think, which is the exact same frequency as the Petrova wavelength, because they have the same frequency and wavelength. So Ryland is blown away by this discovery. Massive discovery. But that's not the big thing. The big thing is neutrinos. See, neutrinos are so small, they literally pass through everything, right? The atoms within your body or anything, they are so separate that neutrinos can pass through them. But for astrophage, which collides with every wavelength of light, we find out earlier in a chapter, it doesn't pass through. It can't get through the cell membrane. So Loken has come up with this idea that if they can stuff astrophage into the hull or between the hull's shell of the ship, they can use it to protect the crew from radiation. Then Ryland makes a few jokes about the situation. And Dr. Loken asks, is it a stupid idea? I mean, I could work with the Russian guy to make sure that we're going to do this, Dmitri, that we can do this and whatnot. And we can have a little bit of extra for reserve, fuel if we need to, for the crew. And Ryland's like, no, I think it's genius. Then Loken blushes. And that's the end of the chapter. Yeah, this is a super science chapter. I wasn't ready for this, actually. I had to read it twice. Thankfully, it's a fairly short chapter. But yeah, that whole neutrino, photons, protons thing, I had to look that up a few times. I've got bullet points right here to look, it's been a long time since I took physics or any of that biology stuff. I just don't know. So I had to look it all up. It's part of the best part about reading a book is you get to find out new things. I'm not sure when I'll need to use this. Maybe some sort of ancillary clue on Jeopardy where I could say, what is photons? But regardless, great chapter. I'm thinking the next chapter, chapter 14, is actually going to take place back in the current time, and we're going to start back with where Ryland is talking to Rocky about radiation. That seems like the perfect place to begin, because there's a lot to cultivate from that in terms of new words and finding out each other's personality a little bit further. So I think that's what we're going to go to. But yeah, pretty good chapter. A lot of science. A lot of science. Not my forte. No math. Good at math. Science not my thing. But I think that's it for us. Look, if you've enjoyed this series, please follow along. Go buy the book. Amazon. It's great. It's fantastic. This chapter, a little bit tough to read, but still phenomenal book, and I think you'll love it. And if you like this content, please like, subscribe, and share. We'd love to continue. But until next time, later, taters.